Hi, everybody. This is your pal, Uncle Hondo. Thanks for joining us today. I'm the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. I'm also your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer. So thank you for Sports Illustrated. So thank you for joining us. I want to take a quick moment on this Thursday and just let you know how much I appreciate you, how wonderful you guys are. I just think the world of you, and I got nothing but respect. And I want to thank you for our growth. I got the numbers yesterday for the month of March, which are just phenomenal. And I don't even have words to just tell you how much I appreciate you, how much I respect you, how grateful I am for you, and just thank you. Without you, none of it's possible. And Raider Nation, you've been so good to me and so kind. And I just hope that you know I sincerely appreciate it. I don't have to do this. I get to do it. It's not a duty. It's a tremendous pleasure. I work for a great company, um, and I get to work for you guys, and you guys are incredible bosses, and I appreciate you. And I know that you have a lot of places that you can go to get Raider information. And every time that you listen, watch, read, whatever you do, like, share, um, you're doing that by choice. And I appreciate it and I respect it. And I just want you to know that I'm grateful for it. Now, today's entire podcast, and it's going to be long because we're going over a ton of Raider information, is all your emails. Now, I need you to do me a couple of favors because some of you have gotten pushed to the spam file because you email so much. And I don't want that to happen. And I actually had somebody stop me in an airport yesterday and just say, "Hey, I've emailed you so much," went back and looked, and they go to spam. Um, one a week, please. And we appreciate that. And then you have to understand we get such a multiplicity of emails. So on one subject today, I think we had 40 or 45 emails on that one subject. So they literally pick the first one, or maybe the one that's the most articulate. Doesn't have to be the best written or the best grammar, just maybe the one that maybe is the most thorough, and then we answer it. So I appreciate all of you. You're very, very important to us. And I just want you to know thank you. You can email me at Spartan Nation Mail, MAIL, at yahoo.com. Please put in the subject line Raiders Q&A. Now, if you put Raiders Q&A and you send an email that's not a question, it goes to spam because we get people, so many people um, who want to converse, which is fine. Don't have a problem with that. But if you put Q&A, it goes somewhere, and if it's not Q&A, then it gets marked as okay, people are trying to skip to the front of the line. Please don't do that. I want every email to get read. I want it to be processed. I want it to be treated 100% appropriately. So just put in the subject line what it is. That goes a long way. Our first email comes to us from Helen, and I thought this one was really important, and I want to answer it. It says, "Dear Mr. Carpenter, I'm a faithful Raider fan. On two or three occasions, I have sent you GoFundMe situations for Raiders in crisis, and you never do anything with it. Can you explain why?" And that's Helen Y. Helen Y. Helen, yes, I can. I get so much email from people asking me, would you promote this? Would you promote that? Could you give this person this? So if you ask, the answer is no. And here's why. If you begin to promote one, then you have to promote all. And you should see the hate mail that I get when I don't promote something. And I don't remember the exact number. I knew a couple hours ago, but I forgot. I think it was something like in the month of March, I had 46 or 47 people asking us to promote charity stuff. It just can't. I literally just can't do it all. So that's why I hope you don't take that as offense, but my feed isn't about raising money for Raider Nation. It doesn't mean that the causes aren't worthy. But early in my career, well, it wasn't early, but at time in my career, someone sent me a GoFundMe, promoted it, and it ended up not being what it was. And it was a very difficult lesson, a very frustrating lesson. And so I hope you understand, Helen, that's why. It's not because of you or anything else, or we think something's a bad cause. It just, that's not what it is that we do. But I appreciate you for that asking. Next comes to us from Vaughn C. Vaughn C. Hello, Hondo. Can you shed some light on how big of correlation there is from a team's contingent going in person to a specific college pro day? If they don't see it in person, does that indicate a lesser interest in a player? Thanks for asking, Vaughn C. Now, I also, before I answer Vaughn's question, I need to also say this. Raider Nation is stepping up with awesome questions. So that's another one. There's only such a limited amount of time. If you want to make sure your question gets asked, then ask one, hit one out of the park. Okay, this is a great one. So, Vaughn, as with when you have 32 teams, you never have congruity congruent opinion on anything. But this is what I know. Years ago, I'm at a pro day, and there's a head coach that's still a head coach today that I'm friends with. In fact, I visited with him at the NFL owners meeting. And really good guy, really good guy. And he's at this pro day. And we were privately talking, and we know each other very well away from football. And I go, who are you here looking at? He goes, well, am I talking to the reporter or my friend? And I said, your friend. He goes, okay, I trust you. He goes, nobody. Everybody knows there's a position that we have a need in, and I am literally here because people are going to think we're after XYZ player. Okay. I know some teams, if they're interested, they'll send a ton of people. Now, sometimes there's 2 or 3 pro days going on at the same time. But I know teams that are like, screw it, don't care. We're going to send everybody. It's too, especially the bigger the pick, meaning first round, especially. We're taking everybody. And then I know some teams, nope, we've seen all the film. We've talked to them at the combine. Sometimes I don't even talk to them at the combine. We've done a top 30 visit or whatever. No, we want there to be as least amount of interest as possible. We don't want anybody knowing what we're thinking. So that's a great question. Again, you have to understand pro days, they don't tell you a lot. And I want to explain what I mean by that, because then your next question will invariably be, then why do them? They don't tell you a lot on the stars because most of them have gone to the combine and worked out. Now, sometimes they're going to say, I'm going to work at my pro day. So then it's important to go there. But the tape don't lie. That's an old adage in the NFL. In fact, somebody told me there's somebody with that has a show called The Tape Don't Lie. I haven't seen it, but that's a great name for a show. It just really depends. There are some people that approach this season with, I mean, so much careful. They think there's a spy behind every corner. Then there's some people, I don't care. Don't care. So that's a great question, Vaughn. And it's not, there are some teams, and I'm not going to get into who I know how they operate. I know how they operate. With pro days, they're very spyish, almost paranoid, but their top 30 visits tell you everything. Then some people I know, the top 30 visits, I know one guy who I called him and I said to him, hey, I heard you're doing a top 30 visit with this kid. What's going on? He goes, absolutely. I said, you don't even need that position. He goes, yeah, but love the kid. And I thought, I wonder if it's a smokescreen. Everybody thought there's no way this team's picking that kid. They didn't go to his pro day, nothing, but bam, then they picked him. And the pick stunned people. So there's some people that are their top 30 picks visits are huge. And then some, they're all smokescreen. Some pro days are smokescreen. Some take the approach, none of it's smokescreen. If this time of year, if we're investing our time, we're interested. Great question, Vaughn. Next one comes to us from Rob W. Rob W. Hey, Hondo, if I remember correctly, Mark Davis talked about adding a new position in football operations. Was that position that Tom Coughlin took on as a senior advisor? If not, what came of that position? A lot of people thought maybe that was a Richard Seymour type role. We've not seen anything yet definitive. But he did talk about that with Tashawn Reed, my buddy from The Athletic, at the owners' meetings in December. So nothing definitive yet. I would think that if anything's going to be definitive, we'll find more about that in a couple months. So good question. This one comes to us from Brent B. In San Diego, California. Hondo, the other day it looked like you drank a whole quart of moonshine on the show when you had a frog in your throat. What's up with that? Brent W. How was that a Raider? How did that even get in here? I'm sorry about that. That shouldn't have even been in here. No, it was water. And I had a frog in my throat. Sorry about that. That shouldn't have even made it in there. Next, Hodari D. Hodari D. It says, hey, Hondo, there's always talk of teams trading up to get a quarterback, and Trey Lance is always the cautionary tale. However, do analysts ever compare results of, let's say, Trey Lance to any of the current quarterbacks in the draft? Keep up the good work as always. Listening, Hodari D. Yeah, they do. So let me go back. And again, I need to be careful because here's what happens. People take what I say and then write stories on it for their websites or comments, and then people come back, Hondo, and they assume what those people write is accurate. Well, that would be integrity. If you're going to quote me, I have no problem with being quoted. I mean, I do two podcasts a day and I write articles every day. I have no problem with being quoted. Just at least have integrity and do it accurately. For example, I reported that the Raiders kicked the tires on a trade for a superstar. I made it clear, nothing imminent. I'm not saying anything's imminent. I just know they're exploring and it's a possibility. Man, you should see some of the stupid email and hate I get. Oh, where's that trade you said was coming? I don't even answer because if you're too dumb to read or listen, or at least go back and see what somebody said before you quote them. It's like in politics. You got one side of the aisle that tells you everything about the other, and one side that tells you everything about the other. I don't need you to tell me what people said. I want to just listen for myself. I don't need anyone telling me what other people said. It's hearsay. I want to listen to what people say. So that's very, very important. So back to what Hodari talked about. I'm prefacing this because I'm giving you other people's opinions. Okay. The consensus of drafters who are very good at drafting quarterbacks, who I have a close relationship with, whose information has proven over the many, many years to be accurate, do think there's a potential Trey Lance here. Somebody with some great physical skills, but they question leadership and some other issues. Okay. Now, it's not 100% because the person that they're comparing them to has more games played than Trey Lance did and played at a bigger school. But they still see some cautionary things, and three of them have equated him to Caleb Williams. Now, Caleb Williams has more God-given talent in this draft than any other player. But as I've told you, an NFL executive told me he's got more red flags than anybody. More red flags than anyone. Now, the guy who told me that is the same guy who told me when Trey Lance was in the draft, we wouldn't touch him. Not interested. I said, not at all? He goes, not even in the 6th and 7th round. Don't want him. And he shared with me, I won't tell you what, the red flags with him. He told me, he goes, Caleb Williams is a more experienced and even more talented Trey Lance. He goes, but I think his career is going to be Trey Lance's. No, I'm not rooting against Caleb Williams. I hope he goes out and has a great career. I don't root for people to fail. No, I'm an eternal optimist. I wake up every day out of the bed, and the first thing I do is thank the Lord that I'm alive. For me, the fact that you're breathing is a reason to be optimistic. If you can put steam on a mirror, you should be optimistic. That's how I approach life. I don't root against people to prosper. I don't root against people to succeed. When somebody does well, I don't assume they cheated or stole it or whatever. Oh, believe in people. I believe in rugged individualism and hard work. Man, if you look, how many Raider players on this team right now? You look at Jack Jones, just scrappy, fiery, rugged individualists who just got a second chance and boom, grabbed it and made a lot of it. Man, I love that. I love to watch people do well. So I'm not rooting against Caleb. I'm just telling you what the evaluators are telling me. I hope that answers your question, Hodari. The next one comes from Ryan Cantu. Ryan says, can you see the Raiders signing someone like Gilmore or Xavier Howard for a year? When you talk about going to games with your dad, what team did you root for? And was it different than your dad? I literally never had the choice growing up. Ryan Cantu. Man, that's a great question. Anytime I get to talk about my dad, man. Coming up just a couple days from 10 years from his passing, and I don't have a bad memory about that man. He's still my hero today, 10 feet tall and bulletproof. So let me say this. I don't know why anyone would want Xavier Howard. Does he have talent? Yes. But every time he does something, he wants to renegotiate his contract. I never understand that with players. I never understand that. You sign a deal. You go out and perform really well. I want a new deal. Well, what the heck? We paid you to perform well. My wife, great wife. I don't go back every 2 years and say, "Hey, we need to renegotiate our deal here," when we didn't have a deal, but because you're hitting it out of the park as a great wife. No, it just makes me want to treat her better. That's why I like the players who play well and say, "It's all right. When my contract comes due, let's party." But no, Xavier Howard to me, injury issues, um, locker room issues, constantly wants a new deal if he does what he's supposed to do. And then amazingly, when he doesn't do what he wants to do, you never hear teams saying, "Oh, you want to redo your contract since you suck." Now they can cut him, but no, I want nothing to do with it. Gilmore? Ooh, nanu, nanu. I like that guy. I like him a lot. That's a football player now. That's a dude. He's a good dude too. Xavier Howard, dear Lord God, no. Oh man, I got an interception. Let's redo my deal. Gave up 4 touchdown passes. Crickets? No. That's not the guy you want in that locker room. No. And he's best ability is availability, and Xavier's hurt too much. Just too many issues there. All right. So as far as the team growing up, well, it's Michigan State Spartans now. They are the University of Michigan. And I can see all the Wolverine fans. I get it. Don't send me the score of the football game. We all know what happened. But you know what? My dad, he just loves sports. So literally, we would go to hockey. I love hockey. Anytime we could go down to Joe Louis Arena in Detroit and, watch an original six. When you watch, the Canadiens, the Leafs would come to town. The Penguins. Of course, that was a really, really good team back in the day. But anytime Gretzky came, he took me to Super Bowls. We would drive to Indianapolis to watch a football game. He'd take me to Detroit to watch a Lions games. It was just a lot of different stuff. It was just sports. He loved basketball. And so it was any sport. was just getting to be with him. And man, priceless. My dad used to say to me all the time, whatever you do, son, give it your all. If you're going to be a fan of a team, be a fan of a team. If you're going to, he'd always use the Bible verse, whatever you do, just do it wholeheartedly. And he'd say, don't do it halfway. And he didn't parent halfway. And so thank you for asking me that. I encourage all of it. If you're Raider fans, man, get out there, get your kids, grandkids to games. Or you say, well, I can't afford it. Okay, great. Then get them in front of the TV. My dad and I had a date every Monday night until I graduated. My entire life. Monday night football. We just watched it together. We'd order a pizza, whatever. I don't know if they had them in your part of the country, but there used to be a Mexican restaurant called Chi-Chi's. Oh, best Mexican food in the world. And they had a meal called the Tampico. 3 cheese enchiladas. Oh, dear God, makeup. Hallelujah. But anyways, he would stop a lot of times and pick us up Chi-Chi's to go. And that was back then they didn't really offer to go like they do now. And he'd bring it home. We'd sit down at our little tables and watch Monday Night Football. So many great memories. That's what's great about sports. When we gather around sports, this is why Raider Nation, you guys are awesome. And I want to really talk about Raider Nation for a minute. Raider Nation's made up of black, white, brown, yellow, and red. It's got Republicans, Democrats, and independents. It's got liberals, and it's got conservatives. It's got men, and it's got women. It's got gay, and it's got straight. It has Buddhists and Baptists, atheists and Anglicans, Episcopalians and Pentecostals. It's got the full gamut from atheists on through, and I got reminded the last time I mentioned this, Orthodox Jews. It's got rich and poor, men and women, boys and girls. But for 3.5 hours, 17 Sundays of the year, all of those people come together. And you don't care. Republicans and Democrats will high five. Christians and atheists will hug. Black and white will have their arms around each other. Because for 3.5 hours, it's all silver and black, baby. For 3.5 hours, we get to reminded of what our country should be. It's what it should be. And I love that about sports. It's one of the few times in our country anymore where people are unified. I remember on September 11, 2001, when all of Congress came out on the steps and Americans gathered around their couches. We'd been attacked on the homeland. Nobody that day cared what color you were. Nobody that day cared if you were gay or straight, Republican or Democrat. That day, Americans came together. I remember having my son in my lap. And as they began to sing God Bless America, my whole family stood up, had our arms around each other. I lost a friend in the World Trade Center. And we cried and sang. We were America. And dear God, as we head to November, the one thing I want for America is for us to be that again, where we remembered we're Americans first and we're family. And that's what sports does. I love that about sports. I love it. I love it. I think it's so cool. To me, I personally believe sports is a gift to us from the Lord. He takes pleasure in us having pleasure in us enjoying things recreationally. And I just think it's a great time. And so you asked about that. There you go. Next. Next one comes to us from Jeff S. Hi, Hondo. When Tom Telesco joins the Raiders, he had to get caught up to the speed quickly on the makeup of the team and who to re-sign and or cut. We also needed to figure out filling needs through free agency and the draft. Do GMs usually just rely on the scouts and coaches for these types of decisions? No. Or do they actually take time to look at the film themselves as well? Yes. And in doing so, did he turn over any of the coaching staff? Did he turn over any of the coaching staff in the process? Well, yeah, there was coaching staff turnover. But traditionally, general managers let their coach pick his staff. Now, they may go and say, for example, I've told this story before. I have a friend who is an extremely successful general manager. And he sits down with his coach every year and goes over his staff. And he always says this to his coach. All right, how many people wanted to hire Coach XYZ? Nobody? So if the other 31 teams don't want him, why do we? No. Sometimes they don't ask because they know this guy's getting paid a ton of money and they know he doesn't want to leave because he's rebuffed everybody. But for the most part, and those conversations are legit. And the general manager said, I want that coach to know I'm going to let you have your staff. But why do you think nobody else wanted him? And if so, why do we? He told me, he goes, my favorite job as a general manager is when I have to go back and give coaches raises because so many people want them. That means he goes, I've never once complained. And this is a general manager whose team traditionally pays assistant coaches as good or better than anyone. He goes, that makes me happy. That means I've got the best staff. He goes, I tell my owner, we want to have the highest coaching payroll in the NFL because that means we got the best staff. I think that's a brilliant way to look at it. So he comes in, and I've shared this a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, he was watching tons of film, talking to coaches, getting input. But yes, Telesco worked his tail off. And I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna walk gingerly here for a minute. I was told by people how incredible his wife was because those first several months, weeks and months, and that hasn't been a ton of months, but his family really sacrificed for him to get the film in and watch, and that there were no complaints. And I was told by an NFL executive at the NFL owners meetings that Tom and his wife are an amazing team. And, there's a lot of NFL executives, not all, there's marital tension because it takes a lot away from you. And I was told that's one of the advantages with Tom Telesco is that he and his wife work so well together and they understood. And he's a great father, by the way, tremendous father and a really good husband. And so I thought that was a really interesting tidbit there on Tom. Okay, next, John M. Hi, Hondo. I love the draft. It's Christmas in April. The last three general managers, including Tom, have all stressed they want leaders and guys that love football. Could you please explain what you see as tangible difference between the last three GMs when it comes to drafting philosophies? When I listen to their interviews, their public statements, the statements sound awful similar. Well, I expect their strategies are really quite different. And any insight is appreciated. Thanks, John M. That's what I meant. Great questions this week. Man, you guys are hitting it out of the park. Yeah, let's get into that for a minute. First of all, I personally like, and I don't always like everybody, I just won't tell you most of the time, 99% of the time. but I won't say I do like him if I don't. But the last three general managers I have great respect for. Now, Mike Mayock was in a very difficult position because there were some picks made. He had a boss. He was not the boss. Okay, the Damon Arnett pick. Listen, I love John Gruden. Dear God, I think he's great for football, and I think he's a top-notch guy. I really like Gruden. Just great, 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 great father, great guy. But John kind of flew by the seat of his pants. Ooh, that guy's talented. I can get the most out of him. Damon Arnett. Um, I think see Mike deserves a lot of leeway there for that. I think there were a couple picks where Mike saw what a guy could be developmentally. Um, and I don't believe that John had this in a couple of those positions, the staff to develop them. So I think Mike made some picks that look bad because the players didn't develop, but I think some of that, a lot of that was on John's staff. And I think Mike had a tendency when he saw what a player could be, maybe believed in him a little too much. But great man. I think he's a good evaluator of talent. I like Mike a lot and I respect him. What a tremendous husband and father. Great guy. And I have a lot of respect for him personally. And I would like to see him get another opportunity with an organization. Doesn't have to be in the GM role or possibly in a GM role if he's allowed to be the boss. I would tell you that I think the Raiders would have been much better had he been in a boss situation because he'll let the head coach. I'll get into more on that. I think it's the next question or a couple down, but so that was Matt Ziegler. Again, had a boss. Now you heard I referenced earlier Mark Davis in December at the owners' meetings when I wrote the article about how Dave Ziegler could have saved the Raiders. And he acknowledged that Dave was the boss, but whether or not he acted like it was another story. I appreciate what Mark said. That's totally accurate. And Dave was an exceptional good GM. Again, there were things that I knew from the beginning. So, for example, when I learned about the CJ Stroud, I learned about it from someone who was a friend, or I'd say a friend. I don't know that. I think a friend of Josh McDaniels. Right after the combine, someone said to me when I wrote the article, "Oh wow, this is Dave Ziegler rewriting history with Hondo after the fact." Ha ha ha. No, that's an ignorant statement, and it's a slam on my integrity. I wouldn't have let Dave Ziegler do that. Every single thing I wrote about, I was aware of it as it went on and discussed it with the parties involved. So I think if Dave would have asserted himself, he'd still be the general manager here. 100%. I believe he'd still be the general manager here. He did a lot good. Now, his inability to lead, I think he should have went to Mark Davis, and I've told this to Dave, so this is not gossip, and said, listen, I need you to clearly delineate the roles. I think this is my opinion. I think he probably felt like if I did it, I'm being disloyal to my friend because he would not have gotten the job without Josh. Josh was not going to go anywhere where he didn't get to handpick his GM. That's why. But I think Dave did an extremely good job. Again, I think the Raiders would have had CJ Stroud last year. So do you think that would have been a good job? Heck yes. So, anyways, that's my point there. Um, to me, Tom Telesco could be the best of the three. I love his style. I like his approach. I like his heritage, who he learned from. I think Ziegler being raised in the New England Patriot way hurt him because Bill Belichick was the definitive boss. And so he was used to, all right, this guy's the head guy and you do what he says. I think had he been more confrontational, it would have helped him. But he was raised in the Belichick system. So he didn't know any different. Telesco comes from the Napoleon tree. Napoleon wants a lot of feedback. Napoleon wasn't afraid to go to his owners and say, listen, I appreciate you. You're the boss. I'm going to do what you want. But I think you're wrong. And I think that helps Telesco. Time's going to tell with Tom. Now, as far as what they're looking for, all three men were looking for the same thing. First of all, high football IQ. It had to be people who understood the game, the nuances of the game. You know, you don't have to be a physicist to be a football player. But there are not a lot of physicists playing football and not a lot of football players that are physicists. Doesn't mean one's dumb and one's not dumb. They're both smart in their field. So they're looking for people that love the game. Film rats, weight room rats, people that just like to be around it. Guys that are going to show up in the offseason and be in the locker room working out. That kind of stuff. High football guys, I'm not doing stuff to keep me off the field. So does that mean hey, I'm not going to go out and have a couple beers with the boys or have some pops? No, it's not what they're talking about. They're not looking for it. Doesn't mean a guy is a Sunday school teacher, and I'm not saying a Sunday school teacher can't have a beer. That's not my point. But they're looking for guys that are committed to football. Guys that, okay, I can go out and do this, but I need to protect it because I got to be in the building tomorrow morning. I'm not going to do something stupid because I got to do this. Guys that are committed to the game, guys that are committed to watching film, that love it. I mean, there is no Max Crosby. Mayock loved him. He had the football character. He loved the game. He was a guy when they went back and studied him. Money's not going to change him. Fierce competitor, fighter, all of that. All of that. Loved it all. Absolutely loved it all. And so that's what they're looking for. There are a lot of guys in this draft that fit that bill, that just love the game. They are guys that are into the game. I had a general manager one time say this to me. There were two guys that were really, really close. And he said, I asked the first guy, what do you do for hobbies? What do you do for fun? And the other guy said, you mean not football? He goes, no. He goes, I guess I play it on PlayStation because if I can't work out or be playing and I need a break, who needs a break from football? I just play PlayStation. The other guy, what do you do for it? Well, my wife and I really enjoy going to art shows and traveling and going around the world in the off season. And the guy said to me, I want the PlayStation guy. Nothing wrong with traveling, nothing wrong with taking a trip. He goes, but I want that guy. He's all football. He's watching football, working out for football, reading the playbook. Oh, by the way, I can't be at the building. Give me a PlayStation. They're looking for that. They're looking for the guys that just breathe it. I'll give you a great one. I had a NFL executive tell me, an NFC executive tell me one time, he goes out to dinner. Now he goes, I got to do 3 dinners in one night at a nice steakhouse. He goes, boy, I'm eating 3 steaks. So the first one I had an appetizer, second one I had dinner, third one I had dessert. And he's interviewing 3 guys at the same position. And he said, first guy comes in and I'm sitting there with him and I'm asking him about it. And he answered me, and then he started talking about steakhouse. Nice kid. He goes, and then he goes, it just the conversation goes in a different direction. Third kid comes in. Now he goes, I didn't even want the third kid. The first two guys were first round potential guys. The third guy, he goes, we would have probably got him in the third round. He goes, but my director of pro scouting really wanted me to interview this kid. So that's why I gave him at the end for dessert. Kid comes walking in. He goes, he's in his workout clothes. He goes, he is at a nice restaurant. All the other guys showed up in suits and ties. And I'm like, whoa. He goes, what's going on? He goes, man, I'm sorry, sir. But he goes, after all my interviews, I got to work out every day. And I had to work out today. And this was the only time I had. He goes, will you please forgive me? I'm sorry, sir. I'm not being disrespectful, sir, but I had to work out. He's like, no, sit down, sit down, sit down. So they sit down. He said, and I'm sitting there with this kid, and I'm asking him questions, and he goes, do you mind if I move some stuff? He goes, he moves everything off the table. He goes, the salt shaker's the quarterback, the pepper's this steak sauce is this, the fork's here. Oh, let me move your creme brulee, and I'm going to put that over here. He goes, he's diagramming football stuff. He goes, and then he stops in the waiter and says, sir, can I get a pen and paper? He starts diagramming. He goes, we were there 3 hours. He goes, I had so much fun with that kid. I walked out, called my director of pro personnel. I said, you're getting a raise. We're picking that kid. And they ended up moving up to pick him in the higher than the third round because he wasn't going to take a chance at losing him because he says, listen, and that guy ended up going to Pro Bowls ahead of the first two guys. Why? He just had it then. You know what I'm talking about? It's like you meet people who love fishing or anything. Anything. You go out into Lot J at Allegiant Stadium for some tailgates. Oh my goodness. There are so many wonderful people out there, and they're like, Hondo, listen, come over and try this. I'm like, what is it? I don't remember the man's name, and I apologize. And if you're watching, sir, you email me, and I'm going to give you the credit you deserve. He goes, like, you got to try my baby back ribs. Now, never offer a fat guy baby back ribs and expect him to say no. I didn't get this figure eating broccoli. Although I kind of like broccoli with cheese, but that's another story. He out in Lot J, this guy gives me, now he starts to tell me the story of the rib. And you know when a good cook starts telling you the story of the rib, you know, tonight we dine. So he gives me this rib. Now I soak these for 3 days in some kind of brine, and then I make my own barbecue sauce. And he goes on, and I mean, and listen, when I say on, it doesn't mean boring. It was great. I mean, I'm salivating. I'm just waiting. Hand me the rib, brother. Tell me about the rib while I'm chewing it. But he's telling me how great it is. And finally, he's like, here you go. And I took that precious rib and put that in my mouth. And I mean, the bones slipped out. So good. Okay. That's the same way with football, man. You want people when they just start talking. This is why I have people say to me, why do you do a podcast every day? Because I love talking football with people who know football. Same principle. So when they're sitting down and they're interviewing and all of that, that's what they mean when they're looking for football guys. I'm not going to use the guy's name. I don't think he would mind, but I don't have his permission. But he was an NFL All-Pro. And he really enjoyed hunting and fishing, but only when he couldn't do football. And his team would say to him, you got to take at least 2 weeks off in the off season. So he'd go a week hunting and a week fishing. Very good friend of mine. I did fishing and hunting both with him. And the entire time he was hunting and fishing, he was great at it, by the way. Very, very good fisherman, very good hunter. But all the football was football. So I'll never forget one time we were casting some lily pads, and he changed his lures because we weren't having very good success. And man, he started slaying the largemouth. And he had said to me, this reminds me of when he named a quarterback that he had success against that a lot of people hadn't. He goes, how you have to hide stuff from him. And we're sitting there in the boat catching largemouth. I changed my lure because he did. So we're slaying him at this point now. I mean, it's like putting a rib in front of a fat guy. I mean, it's just easy. And so, but the whole time the discussion was football. I hope that's making sense to you, sir. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember who it was, but anyways, I hope that makes sense to you, that I'm answering your question appropriately. They're looking for football guys. They're looking for people that love the game. That when they get generational changing wealth, it's not going to change them because it's something that they love. I have had a lot of people tell me I drive a really nice Ford F-150 truck, full leather, four-door, really, really nice truck. And it's probably 8 years old, maybe. And I had a person recently say to me, you can afford it. Why don't you get a new one? I like the one I have. I can afford it, but I like the one I have. I'll trade it in. I like it. I've been a lot of places with that truck. Just a good truck. Okay, they want people like that. That football is just, they love it. Can't get enough of it. They're that kind of guy. And anyways, I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry. I don't know. I got ribs in there. Can you tell I'm hungry today? All right, here we go. Hondo, do you think it's more likely a Telesco and AP take a tackle in the first to help protect the eventual starting quarterback? Or they draft a QB first, try to patch up the right side of the OL later in the draft or free agent market? I'd rather they fix the right side of the OL first. Honestly, thanks for your work and for all you do for Raider Nation. That is from Juan Nino. I'm getting better at my Spanish. Nino. See, I'm rolling that in. I'm trying, man. Y'all are helping me. I appreciate you so much. Okay, if they stay at 13, I expect there's going to be probably corner, offensive line, or defensive line. Could they go quarterback? We don't know how the draft's going to fall out. But if you're asking me to make a guess and don't run out, Hondo says this is definitive. No, that's where I think that they would go. And but you absolutely never know, and we'll see. Next comes us from James M. James says, really enjoy all your articles and podcasts. Look forward to those every day. My question is, do the Raiders have any training camp practices open to the public in 2024? If so, how would I be able to go watch a practice? They always have some practices open, but I don't know to whom. I know for a fact, because I have a lot of friends that are season ticket holders. I don't know if it's only season ticket holders. If you are a season ticket holder, ask your representative. If you're not, I would call the Raiders and ask. That'd be the best way. I don't have a definitive answer for you there. But yes, I do know they have practices that are open. Next one comes from L, and I'm only saying L because I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's Llyr, Lear, maybe, and Natalie Evans. My question is, what is happening with Jacorian Bennett? Will he take the next step? Looking forward to hopefully meeting you next season when myself and my wife come over the pond for a couple of games. Man, you let me know when. I'd love to meet you. I love meeting Raider Nation, man. Y'all are just some tremendous people. So yeah, I'd love to meet you. Okay, so Jacorian Bennett, let's talk about him. I love talking JB. This is a kid, and you can go back to last year's draft, the videos that I do, because I do a draft each night after the draft. Kid is super fast. I mean, he is lightning quick, and he can stop on a dime and give you 9 cents change. That kid is the real deal. Okay. But he's aggressive. And you may remember that I talked to you back, and again, you can go back and watch these videos for proof of performance. But he is a guy that was so fast, he would come up because he's very aggressive, which is how you want your corners. Most corners are afraid of contact. That's not Jacorian Bennett. Kid loves it. Okay. And so I used an example to you. Patrick Mahomes takes off running. So bam, here comes Jacorian Bennett for a full explosion. Okay. But Patrick Mahomes stops on a dime just before the line of scrimmage. And because he cheated up, throws it over his head. Bad news, Raiders. Okay, he was aggressive. So he came in, and I think he had a lot of some issues that Byron Young had. Plenty of talent. Kid's got all the talent. He's got everything that is God-given that you can't teach. And he's a good kid, by the way. I really like JB. But I think he struggled with his confidence. They believe in him. They want him to take that next step, and they think he's got all the ability to do it. He's a guy that, man, 2024 could be a big year for him. Big year. They got Nate Hobbs young, Jack Jones young. If they go CB1 in the first round, he still has 3 seasons left to show something, which is important. But I believe in JB. And he's a guy, though, got to get his confidence back. Got to get it back. Great question there. This comes from Daniel. Oh, no, this comes from Jeffrey T. Hondo, what about Chargers ownership prevented Tom Telesco from being a more effective general manager? This is a great question, and I greatly appreciate it. So I've talked about this a lot. People who I trust within the Chargers organization, who are not Raider fans, but I know them. When Tom Telesco was being interviewed, it didn't make sense to me because they're in salary cap hell, and they are. Let's not pretend. I know there are some who would disagree with that say they weren't really in hell. They went all in, thinking last year was their chance to really be competitive. And that's a fair argument. And it's truthful, but I still think they were in salary cap hell, personal opinion. But they told me that the family was the ones directly in charge of those big contracts and the way the salary cap went. And it wasn't Tom, it was them. That's how. Now, you can go back and look at his coaching pick was a nightmare. He had the worst coach in the NFL, in my opinion. That's a fair argument. Okay. Again, people in the organization told me it was after Sean McVay had really exploded. And that was kind of the direction ownership wanted to go. And these are people that have no vested interest in defending Tom with me. They're just people that I know and trust. So there you go. For whatever it's worth, that comes from unbiased people who are employed by the Chargers. Well, one of them is. No, I think they both are. I may be wrong on that, but I think they both might be. But that's why I say that. Good question there. Thank you for asking, Jeff. The next one comes with some Tom V. Just listen to your brief podcast today and understand where you're coming from and understand you can't believe everything people say this time of year. But why not include a trade up or down if that's what you think they're going to do? Lots of talk about Raiders wanting to move up to get a quarterback, or is that just specific to Jaden Daniels? Great question, Tom. So first of all, in my mock drafts, I did do a trade in my last one, but I don't usually do them. If I do it, it's when I've heard from multiple teams trying to trade up. Okay, so I'm hearing from multiple teams that Minnesota is trying to move up. Totally committed. I'm also hearing that there's a chance that the G-men will want to move up. Now, I've only heard from one person. So there's one thing I haven't talked about with another team, an AFC West team, not the Raiders, by the way. So anyways, that's why I don't. I've got to hear it from multiple teams and hear the same scenario. Then I'll do it. There's a lot of people this time of year. And so, like with me, I only listen to people that have a true proven track record of being truthful. Now, I will tell you, I've had people say to me, I'm going to tell you something. And then they tell me, let's make it up. Raiders are looking for a 500-pound fullback in the first round. And then after they say it, say, okay, now I didn't tell you the truth. So don't write it like it's going to happen. But if anyone asks, you can say, I had an executive tell me this. No, I don't get involved in the cloak and dagger, that stuff. But I only this time of year take people that I trust, or if it's a news source that I can verify. If it's a news source, I may say to you, I've heard this, and there are times that it's come back to be, but I'm very careful. That's why I tell you this comes from somebody I trust and proven. Now, as far as the Raiders, I'm laughing about this, and I'm not laughing at you because I've been telling you for a long time, since right after the season ended, that the Raiders were looking, they looked at all 1 through 12 about trading up. Also, if they weren't going to go to 1, then they needed to wait till draft night to make a trade, because if there's only one guy you want, you got to go to 1 to make sure you get him. Now, if they think there are 2 guys that they want, then you can go to 2. But if you're not sure they'll both be there, you better not trade for 3 unless there are 3 guys you want. Cost wasn't huge. I understand right now there's lots of talk about a Raider trade, which I find humorous because we've been talking about it. But I'm also not going to hype you up by saying I think this is imminent. Do I think the Raiders could make a trade? I do think they could. Do I think that they will, especially before draft night? No. I think they will on draft night? Probably not, but I'm not ruling it out at all. Now watch. Hondo says Raiders won't make trade on draft night. No. I said probably not, but I'm not ruling it out. But if they don't go to 1, let's say they go to 2, which I don't think is available, then you better have 2 guys you like. If you go to 3, you better have 3. You go to 4, you better have 4. But the cost now, because you have Minnesota and you've got the G-men making some calls and some other teams, cost is up there. And go watch the Polian interview from the other day. But I hope that answers your question. Thanks a lot, Daniel V. Or, excuse me, Tom V. Next one comes to us from Leo Callis. Hi, Hondo. My name is Leo. Long time listener, first time writer. Thank you. There used to be a show on TV. I think it was called The Fabulous Sports Lady. I don't remember because I didn't listen much at all. I was a guest a couple times. And when people would say, long time, first time, I don't remember if they flushed a toilet or honked a horn or something. We should do something like that. Maybe eat a rib. Whoever that guy was, get a hold of me. Now, I've been wanting to ask you for a long time. Do you think the NFL will ever let corners bump all the way down the field like they used to allow in the 70s? If they would allow corners to bump, it could help make the game safer and rein in some of these offenses. When I hear people talk about these QBs being the GOAT, yet they have never, ever had a ruling against them, I feel like I'm being gaslit. I like that term. I would love to see them play in the 60s and 70s. You said you wanted to see the Raiders in a all black. The Raiders can't be in all black because we would have to change the words to autumn wind. I know, but I was asked anyways. Remember, he wears a hooded sash with a silver hat about his head. I can't tell you how much I love your energy and how you talk about your faith. Thanks, Leo. Can't help but not talk about it, man. All right. So let's dig in for a minute. About, first of all, this is a really cool question. I was recently having dinner with a very successful former corner in the NFL, and we were talking about all these rules. We want to make the game safer, then allow bump and run all the way down the field, like they did in the 60s and 70s. That'll make the game safer, but they ain't doing it. And I'm going to tell you why. Because they don't want to take points off the board. They love a 49-52 game in the NFL. Ugh. They like it. Audiences love points. So they're not going to do it, even though I agree it would make the game safer. And the players agree it would make the game safer. And I 100% agree all quarterback numbers now have to have the asterisk because the game's not the same game. Can you imagine how good Jim Plunkett and Kenny Stabler and Daryl LaMonica would be? What their numbers would be in today's NFL? Kenny Stabler? Dear Lord, can you imagine Kenny Stabler with his ability to see the field if your corners couldn't tackle people? Man, I get excited just thinking about it. But I like that. I do. I wish there was more bump and run. Totally agree with you, Leo. Great question. Since you're a first time, long time, here's a rib. Next, Gary W. Hondo, with the cost so high at Allegiant, do you have any suggestions? Want to take my son, but 2 tickets without parking or food is almost 2 weeks' salary. Not asking for tickets, just suggestions. Yeah, I'll give you a great one, Gary. Great one. Go to an away game. Go to LA. Nobody there wants to watch the Chargers. It's a home game. Tickets are very inexpensive. Go there. I don't know where you were. I don't have that in my notes. But go to a game somewhere. Go to away games. Plus, it's fun because you get to wear all your silver and black and cheer. Have a good time. If you ever can get to Arrowhead, I'm telling you, those Raider fans on Christmas Day had a ball. They loved it. I mean, Chiefs fans booing their own team, walking out. Raider fans, they're yelling, Raiders. I mean, it was loud across Arrowhead. That's why I laugh at people. We didn't whip them. The Chiefs and their fans don't know that. Genius. Anyways, try an away game. Great place. It's fun, and you'll meet a bunch of Raider fans. Hey, follow us on IG, Hondo SR. Follow us, X, formerly known as Twitter, at Carpenter. And remember, si.com/NFL/Raiders. Thank you all for joining us. This was a fun podcast today. I appreciate you, and I respect you. Thanks for joining us. Again, have a great